it's important to know and be able to identify first the declension of the word. And then after you've identified the declension of the word, what gender it is. Because that drives what you're going to do when you decline the word. Declining the word is a process of showing the word with its endings. So, if we look at the example from the practice test that you guys took yesterday, the angry queen. So we've got 2 columns for singular, 2 columns for plural. Because you need 1 column for the noun, another column for the adjective. That's going to be nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. Our word for angry is irlatus, irlata, irlatum. And our word for queen is regina, regina, queen, queen, regina, regina, queen, queen. Now we notice, guys, that the adjective has 3 forms as opposed to the noun which had 2. The noun has the nominative and the genitive singular. The adjective has nominative masculine, nominative feminine, nominative neuter. Because a noun can never ever change its declension, nor can it change its gender. Well, hello, beautiful. Please do.
So one of my parents blessed me with that, and I think I'd give you the second half.
Can I have?
No.
Pretty sure you can't share with your two.
Razzmatazz.
Good.
Razzmatazz is awesome. It's amazing. I love guava gulp too. Guava gulp's super awesome. It's not too bad. Now, the folks who own that, Caldwell family. Yep, the String family is the folks who own it. Now, back to our regularly scheduled Latin class already in progress. Nouns never ever change their declension or their gender. Adjectives, however, can, because an adjective has to change so it can agree with the noun it modifies in gender, number, and case. I can have an angry boy, I can have an angry queen, I can have an angry town. And I have to change the word angry to make sure it modifies. Now, what we're going to do, guys, is when we decline it, we first have to determine word order. So, according to our sound off facts, in Latin, the adjective goes after the noun it modifies, unless it answers the question of how big or how many. Does angry tell me how big or how many? No. So we are going to put the noun in the first column. And I like to circle it because that's a visual reminder to tell me this is where I want to decline first. Because if it did say how big or how many, so if I said the little queen, and I put little first and queen second, even though queen is going to go second, you decline the noun first. Because the noun tells the adjective what to do, not the other way around. The noun is the boss of the adjective. But if the noun ever gets a little too bossy, they need to remember their place, because the verb is the super boss, who's the queen and king and whatever of everybody. Samuel. Yes, it's very close with you. There's always a bigger person. You've had 2 already. Magnus, large or great. Parvus, small. You'll have it later this year. All right. So, we decline. And we decline our noun by taking the first form and we drop and stop. Regina. We then go to the second form and we chop off the AE. Does anybody remember what we call the stumpy part that's left over? The stumpy part's left over. Owen. The verb stem, but the noun, Kayla? Good. It's the noun base. I see you. It's the noun base. And oh, by the way, just cool Mr. Cobb side trip. Have you noticed that this is a derivative? Yeah. All right. So we take the base and we fill out the rest of the chart with the base. And at this point, It's all about the bass, about the bass. No endings. It's all about the bass, about the bass. No endings. It's all about the bass, about the bass. No endings. It's all about the bass, about the bass, 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 bass.
All about the.
And so if you want to find a word, you can just listen now. If you don't remember from last year, Mr. Cobb is going to show you how. Now, we've got our base on the board, and we need to add the endings. What declension did we say this word was? First declension. Can a noun ever change its declension?
Okay.
No, it can't. So we're going to add first declension endings. That's A, E, A. Pause for a second, please. This macron is essential.
Yes.
Do not leave it off. If you do, I'll be very, very sad, and I'll take away points.
I did it in my notes.
Plural. A, E, R, U, is, as, is. Now, these vowels in the plural, the ones I've marked with the red, those are macrons. And you will see those macrons if you look, guys, if you look up the endings in a chart. I do not consider these essential because they help us with pronunciation, but they aren't required to tell us the difference between one form versus another. This one is necessary because without this macron over the A, it is very difficult to distinguish the difference between the nominative singular and the adverb singular. So you'll save yourself a lot of trouble if you remember it. The good news is that macron is the only essential macron for noun endings. Now, some of the words have macrons that are essential. But in terms of the endings, that is the only essential macron for a noun ending. Yes, ma'am?
Okay. Because I didn't know this, and I'm just like.
It's okay. We can repeat. That's why we reviewed.
Okay, so do you always drop yourself with everything or just the nouns?
Okay. Whenever you are declining a noun, you always drop and stop. No exceptions.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
So.
And that becomes super important when we get into third and fourth declension. But we won't get to that till much later down the road. With verbs, when it's present tense, you drop and stop. But as we will see when we get to the imperfect tense and the future tense later this year, we do not drop and stop that first form. But for right now, for verbs, just present tense. Great question. Yes, sir?
Say the word has a macron, like an essential one, but it's not. The macron is still in the word after. The essential one is still in the word after you chop the ending off. You still put it. Like there ever wasn't.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So, an example would be, I'm going to come back to this in a second, so don't freak. I'm going to bring this back. Our word for poet, do you remember the word for poet? Poeta. And that macron is an essential macron. And the reason why that's an essential macron is that lets me know that I pronounce this as poeta, not poita. Because normally that OE is a diphthong. And so if I were to decline this, I would expect that macron to follow all the way through. Make sense? Okay? All right. So, good question. Now, everyone good on declining first declension word before we move on to the adjective? Now we're going to do the adjective. To do the adjective, you go to the second form and you chop off the A. And if you notice, it really stinks to be the second form in a Latin word. If you're a noun, second form, chop. If you're an adjective, second form, chop. If you're a verb, second form, chop. If you're an adverb, not a problem. There's only one form for adverbs. And there's no chopping with adverbs. But nouns, verbs, adjectives, the second form is where we chop to find our base, root, or stem. So what's left after we chop off that A is one of those new electronic toys that you can work with your phone for your cat. And we take, get it, IRAT? Okay. So, I know, right? Mr. Cobb, will you ever not do that, Joseph? And friends, this is where we forgot a very important old friend. The T-chart. Now, several of you, when you did your little practice thingy yesterday, it was very clear to me that you'd forgotten the T-chart. Those of you who turned in the summer packet, it was very clear that many of you had forgotten the T-chart. So, the T-chart, as a refresher, is a way for us to remember how to decide what endings to put on the adjective. And that's why it is so incredibly important that you know the declension and the gender of the word. So if I want to decline the word queen, I have to ask myself, what is the gender of the word queen? Feminine, not a trick question. So, don't hurt yourself. If the noun is feminine in gender, the adjective, not feminine endings, first declension endings. Because are the first declension endings always feminine?
No.
Not on a pain word, they're not. But if the noun is feminine in gender, the adjective gets first declension endings. So it will get the same endings as the queen. A, E, A, U, Is, As, Is.
What does pain stand for?
We'll get to that tomorrow.
I remember the first words of
It's an acrostic to help. Can I have the side chatter please stop? It's an acrostic to help us remember the 6 exceptions to the first declension rule. Samuel. No, Samuel. I don't need your tales of personal woe. Okay. Any questions about how we decline noun adjective combination with a first declension word? Regular first declension word. I'm going to leave this up on the board. That's not going anywhere, so don't worry, ladies. Okay. So I'll give folks a little while to... And I got to say, super pleased at the number of people I see taking notes right now. Mildly concerned about some of you who aren't taking any notes right now, which is fine. It's fine. It's just, historically speaking, when we do this review stuff, it tends to lull 5th graders into a false sense of security where you're like, oh yeah, I know this. This is last year.
And then when you do the test.
And then when we do the review test next week, which is basically going to be declining noun adjective combinations and conjugating verbs, we're making a lot of silly mistakes that we could have avoided if we maybe paid a slightly closer attention to it. So, just as a friendly public service announcement given to you by way to exhort and encourage and to give time for those of you who've been diligently taking notes a chance to finish the T-chart, because I know it's a lot of writing there. Yes, sir. Okay, is there ever a second declension word that is feminine? Yes. And we will actually have one this year.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
Pain words only words that are...
Begin with P, A, I, or N?
Well, like, could there be a pain word for masculine, like second that
There. We don't call them pain words, but there is a very small, the number of pain words is very small. You guys have only been taught 6, and really there's like maybe fewer than 20 all total in the entirety of the Latin language.
Oh my.
Those 6 are the only 6 you have to worry about. The number of second declension words that are feminine, second declension exceptions, they're even smaller. In fact, I'm only aware of one off the top of my head.
Oh, wow.
Okay? I'm not saying there's not another one out there. It's the only one I've ever come across in using. It's a word for land or earth. Not terra, but it's... All right. And so this word is a second declension word, but it's feminine. It is not. We'll explain why. That's a rabbit trail that involves a side discussion into Arabic that we'll get to when we get to that chapter. So I'm going to ask to put a pause on that one so we can move forward. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Whatever is in your head. But what you can do, I have no problem when we take the test, you starting off with a blank sheet of notebook paper, and as soon as I say you may begin, you jot all your endings down. Would that make things a little less stressful? But that requires that you know the endings, right? If you don't know the endings, that doesn't do you a lot of good. So work on the endings. Copy? Okay. Am I okay to move off of this? Okay. So, our next word was the miserable pig.
Oh, I remember that. It will turn into bacon.
Which is a great, great, wonderful thing.
And that is why it is miserable.
I'm sorry. Okay, now, more for me. Yay. The word for miserable, miserum, The word for pig, porcus, porky. Now, does miserable tell me how big or how many? No, it doesn't. So again, I'm going to put it in the first column. Yes, Carson?
When you chop off the eye, it makes pork.
Pork. I know, right? Okay, so we drop and stop the first form. Porcus. We go to the second form, chop off the E. All the way home. And what's left? Yes, does look a lot like what we would say pork with the C instead of the K. We take the base, we fill out the chart, and we do the Swedish chef imitation. The Swedish chef, you know the Swedish chef? Pork. You don't know the Swedish chef from the Muppets? Let's go for the booze again, the purple girl. There's the booze, and she found the baby in the church. And then you don't put it in the churchy, and then you go, it's doing the ending. Move the endings, got to go. You can shoot. Now,
Are you even actually saying stuff?
if I am, I have no idea. So hopefully I'm not insulting the Swedish grandmother. Now, is this first or second declension, y'all? It's second declension. We know that because of the I. But that's not enough. We have to take the next step. A second declension word can be masculine or it can be neuter. Is this masculine or neuter? It's masculine because of the US. So we then add the second declension, masculine endings. Us, E, O, E, or Is, us, is, quack, quack.
Wait, what?
I did not expect that.
Right, now, there are no essential macrons. There are no essential macrons on second declension words. However, the second declension macrons are super easy to remember on the endings. Basically, if it's an I or an O, it gets a macron. That's it. End of discussion. So, like if you're super into the whole macron thing, go for it.
Wait, are those?
They're not essential. I just said that. All right. Now, the adjective, again, we go to the second form, and again, we chop off the A, and again, that becomes our base. Please stop banging the desk. Thank you. But now, we have to put on our little thinking caps. And, well, I know a lot of you didn't because it showed yesterday. So, when you go to add your endings, considering the T chart, porcus is a masculine word, so I'm going to put second declension masculine endings on it. However, you do not put a US on that first form. Because is that miserus up here? No, this is the nominative. So, when you have an adjective whose masculine singular form ends in R, you have to remember that if you're declining it with a masculine word, you leave the R, do not change it to US. That was a mistake like well over 90% of y'all made yesterday. I'm just saying. E, O, E. Peace. All right. All right. What's your question? Yeah. All right. Gives it. Not important or necessary. Go ahead. That's why you don't add the U.S. Because that's a. But remember, with the noun, we drop and stop the first form. We don't drop and stop the first form. Because if I drop and stop, that's another mistake a lot of you make. If I drop and stop the first form here, I've just put a masculine adjective with my feminine queen. That doesn't agree. So don't do that. I'll go back to it. I got you. I got you. All right? So questions on that? So again, it's important to remember that the T-chart gives us the template on how to add to the noun-adjective combination. Now, what we're going to do, guys, next week is on Monday, we're going, because remember, I don't have you guys tomorrow. No, it's Friday. So, again, if you've got extra credits to turn in, make sure that gets turned in before the end of the day tomorrow. If you want an extra credit, be sure to grab one on your way out after I dismiss. On Monday, we're going to do a noun-adjective combination with a neuter word. We'll discuss pain words. And, yes. Yeah, you're just signing at the bottom. Because what you're signing at the bottom, you're saying, this is Owen's work. When you sign that, you're certifying to me, this is my work. Jonathan didn't help me. Mom didn't help me. Dad didn't help me. My next door neighbor happens to be a Latin professor, didn't help me. Google didn't help me. Actually, Google will hurt you. So, I mean, hold up.
Well, we figured out in Latin.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions about that? All right. So, if your flashcard friend is absent today,